What do you do when you buy a rare card that you've been searching for months? And I'm not talking about kind of rare, I mean really rare. We're talking PSA Pop 1 territory. And I don't mean just Pop 1 in a certain grade like a Pop 1 in a PSA 10. I mean Pop 1 in the entire PSA registry. Last week, I bought this beauty, a 1951 Menko JCM 126 US All-Star Japan Tour Bobby Shantz in a PSA 2.5, and it's gorgeous. And I'm going to liberate it from its plastic slab. Hi, my name is Ryan Ganon. This is the first episode of the Mail Day Cards YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. Hey, I'm back. Through the magic of time travel, only a few seconds have passed for you, but it's been a couple of weeks for me. When I left you, I showed you a 1951 Menko Bobby Shantz card that I cracked out of a PSA slab. And that was the only example of that card that has ever been graded by PSA. Why would I do that? Well, that's a great question, and it requires a detour. What do you think of when you think about Japanese baseball? Well, today you probably think about Shohei Ohtani, who is one of the greatest players in baseball right now, but is on pace to be one of the greatest of all time. You might also think about the current crop of Japanese-born MLB stars like Yoshinobu Yamamoto or Munetaka Murakami, who is a rookie this year. You might also think about the previous generation of players like Ichiro Suzuki, Hideo Nomo, Hideki Matsui, or maybe the World Baseball Classic comes to mind. But the history of America and Japanese baseball relations actually goes back to the 1870s. So we're talking over 150 years. By the early 20th century, American teams were making barnstorming tours in Japan, the most famous of which probably happened around 1934 when there was an American League All-Star team featuring legends like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Jimmy Fox, among others. The trip drew enormous crowds and helped legitimize baseball as a professional sport within Japan. And it really brought it to the national attention. The 1934 tour was historically important for two very different reasons. The Japanese All-Star squad assembled to face the Americans eventually evolved into the Yomiuri Giants. They are Japan's most famous professional baseball team today and the most analog equivalent we have to the New York Yankees. They have 22 national championships, the most successful and widely supported franchise in Japanese baseball. At the time, Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig, mostly Ruth, became a massive celebrity in Japan, and the goodwill created by that tour had a long-lasting influence on Japanese baseball culture. The second reason the 1934 baseball tour was important was that roster included a backup catcher named Joe Berg. Now, Berg was included on the 1934 team at the request of the U.S. government. During his off days, Berg was covertly traveled throughout Tokyo and filmed strategic locations, including Tokyo Harbor. At the time, Japan was becoming a more militarized nation, and Berg's intel became strategically important during World War II. His story has been documented in numerous articles, books, in the movie The Catcher Was a Spy, starring Paul Rudd. Good movie if you haven't seen it. I highly recommend it. But at this time, there was another hugely important figure that in America is not as widely recognized and remembered as he is in Japan. And his name was Lefty O'Doul. O'Doul was instrumental in organizing baseball tours before and after World War II, and he is still revered in Japan for helping rebuild baseball ties between the two countries. In fact, O'Doul's post-war exhibition tours were credited by General Douglas MacArthur as the greatest piece of diplomacy ever. That just gives you an idea of the impact that he had. Now, O'Doul's first visit to Japan was on a barnstorming tour in 1931. He got injured during that tour, and instead of going home, because tickets were very expensive, travel and all that, he stayed with the team, and he spent a lot of time working with local players. He started learning a bit of their language, immersing himself in the culture, and he fell in love with just the culture and the people. He started learning to speak the language and returned every year between 1932 and 1938. He became fluent Japanese speaker, and then obviously there were some issues between the countries during the late 30s through the end of World War II. In 1949, at the request of General Douglas MacArthur, O'Doul and his traveling team came back to Japan to do barnstorming tours. And They had welcome parades. Some of the games had estimated attendance of over 100,000 people. He is still revered to this day in Japanese baseball history, and he was elected to the Japanese Baseball Hall of Fame in 2002. This leads us back to Bobby Shantz. There was a famous 1951 Lefty O'Doul All-Star Tour. This tour featured stars like Joe DiMaggio, and it helped strengthen the U.S.-Japanese relations in American-occupied Japan following World War II. The group of players included Yogi Berra, Joe and Dom DiMaggio, Ferris Fain, Eddie Lopat, Billy Martin, Mel Parnell, and Bobby Shantz. Now, when we're talking about Japanese baseball, most people think in terms of, okay, we have the World Baseball Classic, or we have these modern-day players. If you're in my generation, you probably think of Hideo Nomo and the excitement when he came in Nomo Mania, in 1990, I believe it was 94, 95, when he came into the United States and just took the baseball world by storm. Now, Hideo Nomo was not the first Japanese-born baseball player to come to the United States. That was actually Masanori Murakami, who was a left-handed pitcher who debuted with the San Francisco Giants in 1964. Now, Murakami initially came to the United States as part of an exchange arrangement with Japan's Nankai Hawks. He pitched well in the majors and the minors, and the Giants wanted to keep him, but the Japanese club demanded his return. Apparently, there was some kind of misunderstanding regarding contract laws. So the baseball commissioner and rulers of the day, if you will, said, well, we can't let him go before the season. We have to make sure he finishes his contract because of certain player clauses and things like that. So they made him stay for the whole year. His Japanese club was very not unhappy. So it wasn't until 1995, when Hideo Nomo came back over, that we had another Japanese-born baseball player in Major League Baseball. Now, him coming over was a huge deal. He joined the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he was the first Japanese-born player to permanently establish himself as a full-time player. He won the National League Rookie of the Year and really opened the floodgates to more Japanese baseball players coming. That next generation, we're only talking about 5-6 years later, included Ichiro Suzuki, who's obviously he really upended the game with his slap-hitting, baseball stealing, his cannon of an arm. He became one of the greatest contact hitters in baseball history. When you add his professional time in Japan and the U.S., he would be the all-time hits leader. Tremendous talent. You also had Hideki Matsui, who became a Yankees legend and the first Japanese-born World Series MVP in 2009. And he helped prove that Japanese baseball players can be power hitters. Before there was questions of can they hit for power, but there's no question now. Some of the Japanese players are some of the best talents in the world. And today you're seeing a lot more. You're seeing a lot of pitchers. You're seeing other guys come over. It's been a tremendous benefit to the game, I think, at the world level, but also for us Americans to see this new culture and to see such tremendous talents come and play for us. And you also have a lot of American-born players who have gone over and played in Japan as well. Now, they have certain rules about how many players, foreign-born players, they can have on the roster at any time. Korea has similar rules, but you're seeing a lot of influence in the game, and I love the cross-pollination that we have with these cultures. So why the history lesson, right? Why am I going backwards and telling you all of this? It's because I love America. I love baseball. I love history. And I love how baseball cards capture the intersection between these passions of mine. There's something special about baseball history that feels different to me than any other sport. It's almost like a time capsule. It's a bridge between generations. You can watch the highlights of a player from 100 years ago, read stories about his life, hold his baseball card that was printed while they were playing, and suddenly baseball history feels personal and tangible in a way that it doesn't come alive in the textbooks. And that's one of the reasons I love baseball cards so much. They're more than collectibles, at least to me. They're little snapshots of history. Every card represents a moment in time, a player, a season, a uniform, a stadium, a design style, even the culture or that era. When you flip through old cards, you're not just looking at statistics or photographs. You're catching a piece of history, and you're watching baseball history unfold in front of you. And for me, I like to get them autographed. To me, a signed baseball card takes that connection to the next level. There's something incredible about holding a card and realizing that another player actually touched it. The autograph creates a direct link between the collector and that athlete and that time in history. Maybe it's a Hall of Famer who played before you were even born. Maybe it was somebody whose career you followed as a kid. Maybe it's the up-and-coming player that you're watching now. Whoever it is, there's something about that person holding that card that makes it a more personal connection. It becomes more than cardboard, more than pictures. To me, it's a piece of living history. That love of baseball history and autographed baseball cards has really shaped the way I collect today. I'm currently focused on 2 major collecting projects that are rooted in preserving and appreciating the history of the game. My first project is the Hall of Fame autograph collection. My goal is to acquire a signed baseball card from as many baseball Hall of Famers as possible. Whenever I can, I try to get a signed rookie card. I do that followed by playing days cards, a card that was created during their playing career. And if I can't get that, then a post-playing days card. Now, you can't get that. Some of these cards are out of reach. There are some baseball players or people in the Hall of Fame, they could be executives, etc., who have very few cards, or there may not even be any known exemplars of their autographs, known copies, or there might be 2 or 3 or 4. So some of those are just financially out of reach, and that's okay. In those cases, I'm trying to find a card that best represents that player's place in baseball history, even if it's unsigned. For example, I cannot afford to buy a signed Jackie Robinson card. It's not going to happen, especially a rookie card. But I can't. You know, you're talking $20, $30, $40, $50,000. That's out of reach for me. But I can get a playing days card. And I was able to trade for a beautiful mid-grade 1956 Jackie Robinson that I recently got back from PSA. It's a beautiful card. It came back as a PSA 4, and I love it. It's got that picture of him sliding. It's just a gorgeous design, gorgeous card. It really captures that moment in history. So for me, that's my Jackie Robinson card that will represent him in my Hall of Fame collection. The second project I'm working on, I call my binder project. And honestly, it's a little more fun in some ways because you're not just checking a box. You're not just trying to get, this Hall of Fame autograph, rookie card or whatever. Sometimes those cards become commonplace, I guess, even though they're Hall of Famers. And in some ways, this project is more meaningful. The binder project, to me, it focuses on signed baseball cards from the 1950s onward, and getting some from the 40s and whenever I can as well. That's not the main focus. What I'm trying to do is build out 2 full pages in my binder. When I turn the page, I see nothing but 18 signed 1952 Topps cards. And I turn the page, 18 signed 1953. Turn the page, 18 signed 1954. I want to represent every major baseball card release by year, beginning from the original Bowman sets. I'll probably start with 1950 onward because 48 and 49 Bowman are very tough to get signed. I'll take probably 50 to 55 Bowman, and I'm working on 1952 Topps to present day. Currently, I'm only working through about 1980 or so. I know there's the 51 Topps, but the 51 Topps baseball are pretty tough to find, especially the Blue Series. So right now I have a couple examples of those signed, but I'm probably not going to be able to get 18 of those because of the scarcity and the cost of doing that. What I love about this project is it's like a mini time capsule. I'm also trying to make it unique in that I'm not limiting myself to only standard player cards. I'm trying to get cards that tell the story of the game as the cards were produced. So what does that mean? That means getting the base cards. It means the all-star cards, all-star rookies, record breakers, highlights, managers, league leaders, postseason cards, and really any historically significant subset or card that captures the moment. I love inscriptions. When the players talk about, but maybe they write, Cy Young 1970. I have that on the 1970 Jim Perry card. He wrote Cy Young 1970. I have several players, I've sent them all-star cards, and they wrote 2X All-Star or All-Star 1967, for example. I don't have a card in front of me, but Vern Law does the best inscriptions. He's in his 90s, God bless him, and he is just a tremendous treasure to the hobby, but also to baseball history. And he lists all of his career highlights. Just what a tremendous guy. So to me, opening my binder project and flipping through those pages is like watching baseball history unfold in real time. I can't go back to the 1950s, but I can see what baseball was like in those times, and I can hold a card and look at a card that player held and he wrote his name on and maybe wrote some inscriptions about his career. And man, it's just so special to have those moments. You see the transition from the black and white photography of the old Bowman cards to the color photography, or you see the early Topps cards that were hand painted and then they transition into the color photographs. Then you see the standard posed shots from the 1950s through 1970, and then in 71 Topps started doing action shots, and then you see a lot of the action shots in 71 going forward. You see the change in the designs and the color schemes and the borders, and you see franchises relocate, you see baseball expansion, so many things, dynasties rising and falling, uniforms changing, stadiums, logos, you name it. And I just love it all. To me, this is what captures what I love about the sport, about the game, about the history, and to be able to capture that and then to have those cards that have been held and touched by those players. To me, that's what I love. So that's what the hobby is for me. So collecting is fun. Hunting for the cards is fun. Completing sets, checking off lists, getting the autographs, it's fun. But to me, more than checking off boxes is preserving the stories and connecting with baseball history in a more personal way. Because every card has a story. Every autograph has a story. Every binder page tells a story. And that is what is so meaningful. It's the stories behind the cards. So, that's a lot to unpack, right? Why the history lesson? And for goodness sake, why would I deliberately remove the only copy of a PSA-graded 1951 Menko U.S. All-Star Japan Tour Baseball Bobby Shantz card? That's a lot to say. Because I could. Because Bobby Shantz is still living, and at 100 years of age, he is still signing baseball cards for his fans. Bobby was recently featured in an advertisement for Topps baseball cards, and they showed him a copy of his 1952 Topps baseball card. He reminisced for a moment. He signed the card, and he said, "I wish I could do it all over again." And it just really touched me to see a 100-year-old man signing his card, looking at a card that is 74 years old, and saying, "I wish I could do it all over again." What a life well lived to be able to run it, to wish to be able to run it back. I hope that I feel that way when I'm in my golden years, and I'm trying to live a life now that I'll want to say, "I wish I could do it all over again." A couple of weeks ago, I wrote Bobby Shantz a letter. I sent him that 1951 Menko card. You know, I've been to modern day Japan, and I love my time there. It was beautiful. I love the country. I would love to go back. But I can't imagine how it must have been in 1951, just 6 short years after the end of World War II, and America occupied Japan. I don't know what that would have been like, but I hope that they were treated like royalty. I hope they were treated well, and I hope that Bobby had the trip of a lifetime. I cracked the card out of the PSA Slab because I could, because I wanted to get it signed, but also because I saw Bobby talk about how he wished he could do it all over again. And I hope for a moment he was in his 20s again when he held that card and he thought about his trip to Japan and his time with those great players and the time in another country where he was welcomed by people that 5-10 years before he wouldn't have had any connection with. In fact, we would have been enemies. But just a few short years later, we were bringing cultures together and bridging that gap. So when I look at the story of baseball in Japan, in Japanese baseball players in America today, I think about those early barnstorming tours, and I think about what we went through in World War II, and I think about those post-war years, and I think about a guy like Bobby Shantz or Lefty O'Doul, those guys who had that opportunity to go overseas and experience that culture and really bridge that gap between cultures and bring people together for the love of a game. That's what I think about. So to me, it's about having a personal connection to a person and a time and a place that I can only imagine. And I know some people might cringe at the idea of getting such a rare card signed, but I'm okay with it. My hobby, my rules. I hobby my way, and this is what I love. I love documenting the game's history, and this is how I do it. I do it through autographs. I do it through stories, and this is what I hope to continue to do. And the converse is your hobby, your rules. That's my catchphrase. I tell it to a couple friends of mine very frequently. There's no right or wrong way to collect cards, only what works for you. Your hobby, your rules. And thank you for watching. Now, show and tell time. This is Masanori Murakami. I'll put a better picture up here on the screen. This is the first Japanese-born baseball player to play in the United States. This is his only major issued playing days card from Topps Baseball. This is Dick Castell, signed it on the left, and on the right is Masanori Murakami. He signed it in kanji up here. Just a beautiful card, and I will get this card slabbed and keep it as part of my collection. This is going nowhere. And finally, here is our 1951 Menko Bobby Shantz card. It's hard to see with the reflection. His signature is here, and it almost looks like kanji up and down, but it's actually because he signed it. I believe it's, where are we looking at? He signed it going this way. I'll put a better picture up on the screen. But this is a piece of history. Again, this is not leaving my collection. This card will be a treasured part of my collection for what it represents to Japanese baseball, to American baseball, and what it means for me to be able to hold this in my hand is just such a special card. So thank you for watching. I hope you'll subscribe. I will be back with future episodes. They're not all going to be history lessons. Some will be, but I hope to share some cards that I love. I hope to share how I hobby. And really, I just hope to share my love of the game with you. Thanks for watching.